So good morning, everyone. Good morning in the audience. Good morning, dear panelists. Great pleasure to be here. Pharma, a post-pandemic time of transformation. I think the pandemic has shown us the importance of the pharma industry and the drugs. I think if we didn't have vaccines, we wouldn't sit here today. We wouldn't have our normal lives back. If we don't have antibiotics, if we don't have painkillers, the smallest and minor infection or headache would really be disastrous. So I think we've seen the importance of it, and we want to see and also learn how can we in the future make sure that everyone has access around the world to drugs that we all need and that we also need to develop newly. We also want to understand how can we balance and make sure that we have outcomes at the right costs and also drive innovation. So it's a great pleasure to be here. Thanks for joining us, and thank you very much for a really, really great panel of experts. Really looking forward to the discussion. The first panel was only 2 people. We have 4 experts and executives, so I think it's almost a mission impossible, but we try our best. In the next 30 minutes, we want to break it down into 3 themes. First, what are the key learnings out of the pandemic? Secondly, we want to talk about the role of innovation and R&D. And thirdly, if time allows, we also want to talk about the topic of collaboration and stakeholder alignment. With that, I directly want to kick it off. Lamia, if you want to share with us your key learnings and maybe also questions that still there are out of the pandemic.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So I'm Lamia Tazi, CEO of Sothema, is a pharma industry in Morocco, in Casablanca. What I can say about COVID, everyone knows that for everyone and for pharma industry, it was like a crash test. So we lived a very hard time concerning shortages, concerning people, workers. It was difficult to make them work, and we cannot stop working, unfortunately, in this time. What can I say is that Morocco, I have the experience of Morocco. It was a great experience because it shows us that pharma industry in Morocco, and I can talk about all Middle East, I think, and Africa, we show a lot of agility, resilience, and creativity. So the experience I can share with you now is that even the world was stopped, we were able to manufacture the products for the region, not for Morocco, but for West Africa also, because you know Africa has no manufacturing in place. We were able to be creative. We manufacture some diagnostics kits for testing COVID. We do masks. So all these items were not existing in Morocco before. So what I can say that COVID showed us that countries as us could be creative and innovative. And for the future, I think that we have to continue on this matter. We have to, and in Sothema, for example, we continue this and we put it in our mindset to put more money, to put more time in innovation, because we know, unfortunately, that pandemics can come. Not pandemics, even wars. I don't know if there are some pharma industry, but we have the same issues now with shortages of APIs. So we have to be agile and we have to be creative. So this is for pharma industry. Morocco, after this, took a lot of decisions, great decisions. I can share it with you also. We decided to create medical devices market and world, because it wasn't exist in Morocco before. So Morocco is helping industry to create medical devices industries. We are also in diagnostics. In terms of vaccines, Morocco is setting up the biggest in Africa, the biggest plant for manufacturing vaccines. So the conclusion is that if COVID was a bad time for all of us, I think that it's a great time for us, for our countries and for our region to start thinking out of the box and thinking about creativity and innovation.
Thank you very much, Lamia. So there's always an opportunity also in the challenge. That's nice to hear. And I think also what is nice about the panel is that we have those different perspectives. Morocco, we have KSA, we have UAE. We also have the different perspectives from biologics focus to branded generics and also down to vaccines and the pharmacy. So maybe handing it over to Tarek, the CEO of Jamjoom Pharma in KSA, the biggest exporter of branded generics in KSA. What are your learnings, and maybe also how can we prepare ourselves for a possible next pandemic?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you, Andreas, for the question. And let me really start by congratulating Forbes and the partners on a great choice of couple of days approach. I think yesterday, we needed yesterday to take us really into the future, having been into the pandemic for more than we could have afforded. And we almost got into virtual reality yesterday, talking about longevity and living beyond the 85 and 90 and 100, which is definitely something that we all need to aspire for, genome therapy and others. But I guess today is a good balance whereby we need to bring ourselves a little bit back on the ground, back to earth, and we really haven't been out of the woods yet from COVID and the sufferings within it. How can we manage the steps properly between today and getting into the longevity and the genome and the precision therapy and everything else? Let me just start with because the question you're asking, Andreas, is really, I think every one of the audience would love to write a chapter into the big book of learning post-COVID. So let me just ask the audience, how many of us have lost a dear friend or a family member to COVID? How many of the audience lost a dear friend or a family member to COVID? Quite a few, and I'm sorry for every one of you and for myself as well. I think a more relevant question to us here in the room, congratulations that we all survived COVID, but a more relevant, how many of us have suffered at least once, if not twice, from COVID and we got out of it? Yeah, absolutely. And I would like to think, Andreas, that it's kind of, we were given really a second chance as everyone who had hands up, and including myself, and hopefully we can relate this to us making a difference so that we are more ready into facing the next pandemic. Hopefully we don't have another, but if we do, how can we face it appropriately, admitting that we are not yet out of the woods of the first one. I think the key three learnings for me, not only from a Saudi perspective, but from a regional and more broader perspective, is definitely we were learned again the hard way, things that I was claiming when I first got into selling and marketing vaccines more than 20, 30 years ago, which is prevention is far more effective than control and treatment. And prevention doesn't just mean vaccine, but I think Mr. Ahmed here, Dr. Ahmed, reminded us yesterday that it's all about vaccination. It's not only about vaccine. How can you really ensure that you get the vaccine into the patient, which includes access, which includes affordability, and it includes a lot of things. So really, how can we focus on this prevention theme into the future, not only with COVID, but with many other things? I guess the second thing that we were all taught the hard way again is the fact that you can only be as protected as your environment is. So it's not anymore about your own society. It's not anymore about your own city, not even the country, but it's the countries around you. And we've seen a lot of blockage and a lot of banning on travel and whatever. I think we need to ask ourselves, if at all we will face a second or another pandemic, God forbid, are we going to do the same mistakes again? Are we going to shut down countries or whatever? Or are we going to become more ready and really enable the environment to become more prepared and to contribute into the protection of the individual? So how can this time the community contribute to the individual rather than individuals paying the hard time and contributing to community in the first one? I guess the third one, which is really was mind intriguing for me, the third learning, which is we were taught the hard way to go back to basics. I mean, we were we were taught that basically 70–80% of your COVID protection is to wash your hand properly and to wear a mask with $1. And that's it. And even then, when the bans were over and you go to places like public places or shopping malls and whatever, you find people, yes, wearing masks because it's mandatory because of the mall rules and whatever. But funny enough, when they sneeze, this is where they need the mask most, they get the mask off and they sneeze in your face. So how can we teach ourselves the etiquettes and the rules of really how to protect each other, how to help each other to be protected? Not only COVID, but everything else. Imagine in the normal days how many flu we get from this kind of behavior if you're not careful. And we're off work and this and that. So I think that's another key learning for us really, and going forward I think we need to implement all this learning into facing our next steps.
Prevention and the efforts of society, I couldn't agree more. And I think also Professor Mazen, founder and managing director of SaudiVax, focusing and dedicating his life in finding prevention and vaccines for diseases that get spread easily. What are your takeaways from the pandemic, and maybe also some initiatives that you and SaudiVax have pushed along the way to prepare ourselves better?
Thank you, Andreas, for this, and good morning, everybody. Initiatives and learning are usually coupled. I'll highlight two examples where one led to the other. In February 2020, I think we were among the very first biotech companies that signed a co-development agreement for a monoclonal antibody against COVID-19, where people still at that time didn't know if we will succeed with the vaccine or not, with a US biotech company. That was coupled with a big learning curve, because at the time, the bioprocessing capacity worldwide was really snug, and not only that, was dedicated by bylaws and acts to be supporting national demands of those countries as a priority. The OIC member countries, the Islamic member countries, had a bioprocessing capacity of 2% of the world's supply, which obviously wasn't sufficient to support the development for our region. And so we had to drop, unfortunately, that initiative, although it proved with time that that was a great starting point for patients who have been infected with COVID-19, especially moderate disease. The reverse has also been true. So we've learned from the COVID-19 that there are amazing new platforms that could be used for vaccine manufacturing. So we've seen the viral vectors, we've seen the nucleic acid based vaccines, and that led to two initiatives that also we've successfully done inside SaudiVax. We've just a couple of weeks ago signed exclusively a group of licenses to secure the ability for us to utilize the viral vector platform for vaccine manufacturing, and we've done that for our entire region. At the same time, we've kicked off with academia an R&D program in mRNA vaccine technologies.
It's quite vulnerable, and I think now I'd look, when I say medication security, I mean the accessibility and the availability of that product throughout the region becomes a very, very important step. So I think one of the things that pharmacy now does is it actually challenges the boundaries of what medication is available, what's accessible to us, and actually bringing and challenging and bringing the new things to market. So I see the opportunity here is to be able to bring broader medication brands and branded generics, as well as new generation drugs, into the market sooner, quicker, to make sure that we can be on the forefront of any issues that come up in the future. And the second thing I think which is really important is that pharmacy had to connect with its patients in a way that it's never connected before. Pharmacy tends to be a very traditional way of dispensing medication within the MENA area, and actually now it's had to think very, very differently. And what it has had to do in its first step is taking its first step on its digital journey, but it has only taken its first step, and that first step is about accessibility. But it's got so much further to go today, and I see that as being the real challenge, and actually that's what's so exciting about this conference, because it starts to bring all of that together and actually shows that pharmacy has a real big part to play.
Thank you very much, Shaun. So I think a nice summary of learnings out of COVID-19. Good steps, good progress, but I think not still yet to be fully relaxed for the next pandemic. Let's go to the second theme that we've prepared, and it's about the role of innovation and research and development. And I think, Lamia, you have been involved in the clinical trials of the COVID vaccine, of manufacturing COVID vaccine in Morocco, in Africa, as one of the leading companies. What's the impact and the importance of innovation and R&D for you and for Africa and Morocco more specifically?
Sothema has the chance to conduct the first clinical trial of Sinopharm vaccines in Morocco and also manufacture the vaccine of Sinopharm for Morocco and African countries. So it was a big opportunity and big challenge and a honor after all to serve our country. So it was, it was the first step for innovation. So R&D, if I can talk about R&D, it's opportunity and a big challenge. R&D in our domain, unfortunately, we cannot, I'm talking about Morocco and perhaps the region also, we cannot talk about the total R&D. So we know that it costs a lot and at the moment, rich countries has the appanage of doing this R&D, but in our countries we are most doing galenic developments. It was in the past, but COVID showed us that we can do more. So as you said, we perform clinical trials now. We perform manufacturing of devices. Sothema has been involved for 30 years now in manufacturing biosimilars. Like insulin, like heparin, like some, all these molecules are considered as innovation. But I think now that we can do more, and we cannot do more alone. If I have a message now in this conference and with my friends from the region, I think it's the time to create the ecosystem of innovation. And this ecosystem has to involve all our countries, because we know that every country has an expertise in something. And I'm sure if we add all these expertises, we will be able to do more of what we are doing now. And when I'm talking about innovation, I'm talking about IA, artificial intelligence, and we know that it is the future, and we know that we are able to do it because we have many engineers and we have many IT managers in all our countries. I'm talking about diagnostics also, I'm talking about biosimilars, vaccines, it's ongoing, so congratulations, and I really hope that we can create an ecosystem together to be strong and to be prepared for the next pandemics.
Thank you, and I think COVID-19 or the vaccine development has shown if the whole world really works together, it can happen in 1-2 years, which usually takes 10 to 20 years. Amazing. So, Tarek, how do you contribute to this goal, and what's the role that innovation and R&D actually plays in this context?
Sure, Andreas, thank you for the question. So, I mean, first, I guess it's a very inspiring and doable target for us, and I hope that we can even achieve this ahead of 2030. If you look at countries across the region, I mean, Morocco is a great example where the local industry are really playing a very strong role there. Egypt is another example, Algeria, and I mean, I don't want to miss anyone else. So Saudi really and the Gulf were in a unique situation where the reliance initially were in different steps, but I think everyone today is realizing that you can only get as secure, especially when there are bans on importations and there are issues and there are prioritization across the globe, which countries will give what. You need a strong local industry. And definitely, I guess that together, I like what Lamia said very much, which is how can the ecosystem work? It's not, I mean, individually, yes, we can contribute, but I think together we can do magic and we can serve the community at better pace and faster. So if I think at us alone, definitely we can bring some tailor-made solutions to the region, whereby, I mean, it might not be the, I mean, take diabetes. I think one of the panelists yesterday were speaking about diabetes and the fact that although you have accessibility, although you have affordability, although you have great medications, you are 75% out of control when it comes to type A or type B or type 2 diabetes. Can we bring a more fulfilled solution, integrated solution to diabetes? Our region here, no thanks to the eating habits and the lack of exercise, has one of the highest, as you know, Shaun, better than anyone, one of the highest incidence of diabetes across the globe. Can we serve this community better in an area like this with tailor-made integrated solution rather than just the medication, where medication alone have shown a lot of failure across or lack of control? And many other things. Can we collaborate? I mean, I focus on something and Mazen helps us something else, and we collaborate and we do it and we launch it together. He does what his company is great at, which is innovation, and I do what my company is great at, which is the commercialization of the greatness or the great ideas that he can bring to the table. So how can we work together with the ecosystem, as Lamia mentioned? But more importantly, it's not even just limited to us domestically, but can we cooperate and collaborate more with the big pharma? I mean, just a few years ago, I was on the other side of the fence, and I know how big pharma get competitive, but it's not the time, quite honestly. If we were taught something out of COVID, we can collaborate. I mean, you're not here. I mean, you were not here as a big pharma when PANs were happening. I mean, I could have helped you. He could have helped you if we have some collaboration and we made your product available domestically. We could have helped you earlier and faster and at a better pace. So I think this dialogue has to happen across us, and the ecosystem has to work at its best to serve our purposes, not only with Vision 2030, but every country in the regions, especially those at a more need into getting self-sufficiency. And I think we can contribute in a great way.
Thank you very much. Handing it over to Professor Mazen. What do you see the role of advanced technologies or also scientific innovations in bringing forward halal vaccines for the MENA region, in localizing manufacturing of biologics? I'm happy to get your perspective.
Thank you, Andreas. I think everybody recognized the major investment that this sector has attracted the past 2-3 years because of the COVID-19. This is the global investment we're talking about, and it is very understandable that this disrupted the business big time. Today, I think if you're starting today to do anything in biotech, you need to think of what are the things that happened in the last 3 years in comparison to the past 30 years of biomanufacturing process. We've changed our platforms, we've doubled our platforms, we've increased our productivity, we changed our technology, we have completely disrupted the value chain, the cold management. We have now talking about sustainability, green initiatives, automation, introduction of 4.0 industry into bioprocessing. I think, and that's not talking about the products. This is just on the manufacturing side of things. The process developments, the clinical developments, even that. And one of the big disruptions that happened was the fast approvals of products, because of rapid development tactics and even the alignment with the regulations on all these aspects. That is important. This is by itself is a big disruption into the ecosystem. And so one of the biggest focuses of SaudiVax in 2023 is really to benefit from all these disruptive achievements that was driven by mega funding, and be able to think of how can we be agile, how can we be flexible, how can we expand into technologies, how can we accommodate the slew of huge number of products coming into regulatory approvals, and support access. I mean, we've talked about genomics and precision medicine. Access is going to be a major issue. Thalassemia major beta was just announced, the gene therapy for it was announced a couple of weeks ago. It's $3 million per patient. How do you guarantee the access? How do you support that? So I think a big part of what SaudiVax is focusing on in 2022, which is ending 2023, is really then how do you, in a greenfield, with an eye on the region, how do you benefit from all that disruptive technologies that has been took place and adopt it to be able to deliver to the region? Of course, this has to happen in parallel to our bread and butter business, which is innovation and product development, and we're pushing products now towards the last bit of clinical development towards commercialization. And so you need to walk on the bridge and building it while it's on between two skyscrapers. So it's a tough position, but it's also an exciting time.
Thank you. Shaun, coming to the last step for pharmacy, why do you think that innovation, digital technologies are actually so important to increase the value of pharmacy services to the patients and maybe change also the role that pharmacies play in the whole stakeholder landscape?
That's a lot of questions, so let's try and break that down for a second. Okay, so first of all, I think the panel here have already come up with some really great thought processes and some really good collaborative ideas. But the challenge is around some of the funding element that goes with that. It can be incredibly expensive. But let's just move beyond that just for a moment. The value that innovation in medication can give to each and every life is incredible. So if you take somebody who's on a chronic medication, for example, being able to live well for longer through the plan of longevity, for example, is a key opportunity that not only will make a contribution to society, but will also make an economic contribution to the MENA area as well. And you see that whether it's a chronic medication where somebody is able to live well for longer, or an acute medication management process where they are to be able to return to the social and economic world quicker, or actually a third dimension, which would actually be around preventative health, which actually means you may not get sick at all. So therefore making a wider and more significant contribution overall. And for me, that ambition, I think, is something that North Star element is something that we shouldn't ignore in any shape or form. And I think that therefore pharmacy plays a very big part of that. And at the moment, the pharmacy program very much sits at the end of the ecosystem. But actually, in many countries across the world, it plays a much bigger part in the heart of actual healthcare. And my ambition is to absolutely move that within the MENA area. And I don't apologize for saying it. The reality of it is that pharmacists is probably underutilized in the environment as it is today and can do so much more. And for me, and I know the colleagues that I work with, there's a huge opportunity here to be able to help manage people's medications better, which will reduce the number of readmissions into hospital, which will enable people to be returned to the social and economic world quicker and faster, and make a bigger contribution to society. And I think that within that realm, it means that pharmacy can be unlocked and really help move that forward. And that becomes more accessible through digital transformation. So today, pharmacy has taken the first steps in terms of accessibility for pharmacy, but actually, just imagine being able to get your medication where you want it, when you want it, in the format that you want, and instead of having to wait and sit for someone to come and talk to you, once you've finished with the physician, you can go home. And actually, at a time that is suitable to you, at a time that you're more receptive to it, we will talk to you about your medication. And if it's for a loved one, or somebody who you are looking after from a chronic illness perspective, at a time when your head is ready to be able to take on that knowledge, that's surely a better conversation for the future. So I stand with my colleagues completely here in terms of aligning with how do we do things better. But pharmacy and pharmacists have a key role to help sure that the three of my panel here, their product is delivered in the best way possible. And ultimately, that pays back, not only in society, but economically as well.
Thank you very much. I think we might open up to the audience if there are any questions.
Any questions? Just raise your hand.
Any questions around Pharma? I see one hand back there, 2 hands actually. And please ask your question, maybe add also who this question is directed to. Otherwise, maybe we also ask in the panel who feels most comfortable and knowledgeable to answer this question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am a neurologist and I see a lot of patients with chronic diseases. My question to the panel is that we have artificial intelligence and also emotional intelligence in taking care of the patients who cannot afford some medications. And there is a lot of wastage at the moment. So if I prescribe something to a patient, it doesn't help them or they have side effects. They may not need that medicine, but because of the legal issues, these medications cannot be used for someone else. So can we build a system where we can utilize these medications for those who may not be able to afford it? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So a challenging question. Who wants to take it? Shaun.
I'll take it. Okay. I stand 100% behind what you do. Yeah. In terms of the wastage that goes into the system now, it's significant. And that's not just for situations like yourself, but actually throughout the whole of the healthcare and pharmacy divisions right now. I would love to find a way to make that work. But that's where I think the personalization of medication is so important. Because if we can understand and unlock actually each individual's needs, then we can have a really good quality conversation. And what that means is that, so tonight, for example, we dispense medication in a kind of in a standard way. So everybody's conditions, and this was raised yesterday. Why is it that we can be educated the same, we can have the same diagnosis, we can give out the same drugs, but we have a different effect and a different outcome? And actually, that's the bit that we need to unlock. And actually, some of the work that we're working towards and striving towards is to make sure that every single person's individual understanding of how they personally work, how their molecular structure works, gives us the opportunity to do that better. When we can do that, we can really make a big difference. But to your point for today, actually, I think this is where pharmacy can help you so much more. Because I think that pharmacy being involved in those conversations, helping manage medicines along with yourselves, can make a real difference in the environment about what people are taking and how they're taking it. So we can turn off those taps quickly. And if we can turn off those taps quickly, then we can donate what would have been the medication elsewhere. So, but it's a great question, and thank you for asking it.
So while I fully agree with you that there definitely is a wastage, there is no doubt about it, and we have witnessed this in many places, and the pandemic taught us a lot about the wastage. I don't think we can limit it to medications. I think we mentioned a lot yesterday and today as well, the value chain approach. How can we have a value-based integrated service to the patient or to the community? And by that, we really can never focus only on medication as a siloed expense. There, we failed ourselves, and we failed the service, and we failed the community. Quite honestly, medication has to be an integral part and an important part. I think one of the learnings from the COVID, the biggest learning for me at least, I don't know about you guys, is that our value chain are designed or were designed to serve us when the going is good. When the going gets tough, our value chain didn't really serve our purpose, and we were all over the place. I think if I ask the esteemed audience here about, in your view, what was the highest or the most expensive cost or burden on both individuals and community during the COVID time? What was the highest burden from a cost perspective? And my colleagues as well. In my view, it was, and I hope you didn't have to travel as frequent as I do, but I think I've conducted something between 30 to 40 COVID tests. And it ranged between, at the peak, 140 euro in places like Geneva, and the lowest was $30. So, If someone can think with an intriguing mind about where does this fit with the value chain, and us as people who have got the vaccines, a couple of vaccines, perhaps or vaccination, I mean, can we get away without with not having to do a test every time we travel? Because even if we are infected, we get very little, and we can be little contagious. At least let's do trials to prove this, so that we can learn with the next. And that's a huge wastage in the value chain. While vaccines itself have proven that it's the most effective. Yeah, the maximum of us has got 3 vaccination, and the average cost is like $25 to $30, so $100. That's not even the cost of one of the COVID test that I had to do. So I think we need to challenge really the status quo in terms of the ecosystem wastage, rather than focusing on medication or a single way. I think only then we can really make the system work for the best.
Did that answer the question sufficiently? No? Yes? Yes?
Do we have any other questions? We got time maybe for one more. Yeah. Any other questions? Right here, Natalie?
Hello. Yeah, this
okay.
is
we'll take one more here as well.
Dr. Nabil Al-Shurbagi. I specialize in drug discovery in Pennsylvania. Now, I think the key issue here is that we learn 2 things from the COVID. Is that number 1 is that we have a gap in the vaccine. Number 2 is that we have a gap in the drug discovery arena. So basically, the good idea is that if we can establish a platform for the vaccine, whether it's an mRNA or a monoclonal, that can tackle any type of infection that's coming on board in a faster manner, so that we can do the treatment before we can do the vaccination before it spread like crazy, like the COVID. And number 2 is that we have to really establish a platform in terms of the drug discovery, that we can identify the quick treatment for. I know that, for example, drug discovery, it's a long process. So if we can establish a way or a platform that we can identify quickly the drugs that could be efficacious and move forward to production, that could save a lot of lives.
Thank you very much. I think, Mazen?
Yeah,
you want to react on this?
Quick comments. I think there are 3 Ds that needs to be aligned, right? Discovery, development, and deployment. And if you don't align the 3 together, you're not going to be able to help the patients. Because at the end of the day, all of what we want to do is to help the patient. And so the alignment between discovery, development, and deployment is easier said than done. And I think one point is, it's not the physical connection that really works, but and we've seen with the COVID-19, and we could use Pfizer as a good example, it's a multi-country collaboration really that made it happen. But what is needed, I think, is the right leadership, the right nidus of partnerships that is open, easy, practical. We're really trying to do our best to develop a small nidus in Jeddah, which hopefully we'll announce Q1 next year, where we have a training and development platform that is open for academia and for biotechs and for industry, so that to allow the connection between discovery, development, and deployment. If you don't connect it, you're always going to have a failure in the system.
Thank you so much, Professor Mazen, and thank you so much, Forbes Middle East and obviously Pure Health, for bringing all people together.
Very sorry, but can we take one last question?
Of course. I would like to talk for hours. No worries. Okay, perfect. One more question.
Thank you very much. It's not questions rather than reflection. That is Thamer Al-Mhed, Saudi Chemical Holding, KSA. Just a reflection on the Saudi Arabia Vision 2030 regarding the healthcare sector. I think there are a lot of initiatives going on between different government bodies and ministers. And to measure the success in 2020, the local manufacturing in the healthcare represented like 25% only. Currently, it is at 33%. So it is going up, and hopefully by 2030, we will be there. But back to maybe Dr. Tarek point, nowadays we have like a mandatory list of pharmaceutical product that it should be manufactured locally by local companies. And one of those companies that will benefit a lot is Jamjoom Pharma and other local companies like our Pharma company also. So just it's a reflection. Transformation is going on, especially in the healthcare, and we will achieve it, inshallah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that comment. Any more questions we promised?
Yeah, no, that's it.
Good. I think, yeah, unfortunately we're out of time, but I think every one of our experts is happy to be approached also directly after our panel. Other panels are also waiting. So from my side, a big thank you to Forbes Middle East and Pure Health for a selection of a great panel of experts, leaders, and executives in their field, sharing perspectives from KSA, the UAE, and also Morocco. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here, and thank you very much for joining and listening and engaging with us. I wish you a great day, and let's see if Morocco...
Last wish for Moroccan team
today. We're all going to watch it.
If football do it, I think that healthcare can do it also.
Exactly. Thank you very much.